Hi there, so warm welcome to our new YouTube channel. This is myself, I'm Phil, and this is
Martin.
We run a small company called North Guitars based in Staffordshire in England. Now this channel basically is, we're not here to sell you our guitars, although it'd be great if you did. What we're hopefully going to do is talk about techniques within luthiery, differences in pickups, woods, that type of thing. Obviously at some point we're going to broach the dreaded tone wood subject, which I know will probably get either a lot of hate or a lot of love, but either way it's good to hear people's opinion. We also want to introduce a very special young man to me and Martin, a young lad called Jake. Jake helps us out sometimes at the workshop. He's a fantastic young player. Jake, do you want to come in and say hello?
Hi.
Yeah. Jake's Gen Z, so he gets a bit nervous. But myself and Martin, we primarily, I guess, play blues and things like that, you know, a little bit of rock. Jake's a hell of a hard rock player, so Jake's can do some of the demos when we want to do the demos on that. So, yeah, you look forward to seeing Jake and hearing his quirky ways and his great playing. So we thought we'd put a bit of an interesting subject up for the first video that we're going to do. Myself and Martin decided to do these pretty much unscripted, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally unscripted.
As you can tell. But today we're going to talk about our 4 favourite guitars. So straight away I'm going to throw this one over to Martin to throw him off the ball a bit.
Right. Well, I suspect we've probably got a couple that are going to be the same at least.
Possibly.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing because people quite often ask me, what's your favourite guitar, or if you could buy any guitar, which guitar would you buy? I think if we're talking about pure classics, it's slightly different because I guess I like lots of different guitars. I wouldn't say any guitar to me is the perfect guitar. I often find that there's something about one guitar that I don't like. So I haven't got anything. If somebody said, oh, what's your ultimate guitar? It would be a bit of a combination of things, I guess. But in terms of purely my favourite 4 guitars, so first would have to be the classic Strat. I guess like a lot of people who are probably watching this, I was brought up sort of on rock music. My sort of big idol when I was sort of in my formative years, I guess, was Ritchie Blackmore. Clearly a Strat player.
The 2 pickup option then.
Well, yeah, but I didn't realise that at the time, I guess. As most people thought Ritchie Blackmore was using 3 pickups, but he used just to drop the middle one down and use the neck in the bridge all the time. So yeah, I mean, it's got to be a Strat's got to be up there for me. As I said before, there's bits I don't like about guitars, and the one thing that I don't like about a Strat, probably the only thing, is I really don't like where the volume knob is right next to the bridge pickup.
Yeah, for those who don't know what we're talking about, we have an example. So this is my really old Tokai. I know people laugh at Tokai a bit, but these are amazing made in Japan instruments.
Yeah, I really don't like the volume knob there. Just to where probably my playing. I think it's probably alright if you're playing up in the neck, but if you come further down, I always find that volume knob just gets in the way for me. I've normally built things myself, which I've basically just put the 2 pots on, volume knobs, volume and tone I should say, so I've generally just missed that one off. And for me, I guess that's about the only thing on a Strat that I don't like. Trem I don't tend to use a lot, but it's still worth having on a Strat, and it does give it some of its classic sort of tone in terms of its natural kind of reverb that you get off a Strat, and a lot of that's to do with the bridge, the trem bridge on there.
Yeah, I think it's to do with the springs in the back as well.
Yeah. So yeah, the classic Strat, as I say, I guess like a lot of people out there, everybody grows up with sort of their favourite guitarist, and whatever they're playing seems to be whatever you gravitate to first, and then you sort of make your own mind up after that.
Yeah, you see, for me, I play a lot more towards the neck when I play, so I've never found this to be an issue for me. I do catch a switch every now and again, which is a bit awkward sometimes when you play midway through the next solo and you hit it into position 4. Yeah, apart from that, it's great design.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what a design. Yeah. Not too many things that have lasted that long and still at the top of the tree, really. So there you go.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll put that one back.
My not necessarily favourite guitar, but the one that I think is most close for me to being perfect and nothing that I would change on it would have to be the 335. I think from a point of view of a guitar that's the longevity it's had, and it's classic sort of roots in blues and rock. I think the 335 to me is pretty close to perfection.
Yes,
I don't think
versatile,
there's
isn't it? Versatile.
It's that sort of guitar that I don't think there's anything on that I would actually change in terms of its playability or the position of anything. I think for me it's just as close to perfection as you can get, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what a year for Gibson that was as well, 1958.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Insanely good year that. So yeah, obviously you get a lot of people, different types of people, don't you, playing 335s. You get the derivatives, people like Dave Grohl playing them, all the way through to people like Larry Carlton, BB, obviously BB King. I know is wasn't a 335 per se, but certainly same shape.
335-esque. Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those guitars that I think it's one of the most comfortable guitars you can sit down in a chair with and play, or on a sofa.
Yeah, you see, I
really,
when I was
really sort of comfy, but
I guess when I was a bit younger, for me, I would have always chosen a 339 over a 335 because of the size.
Yeah.
Because my son, when my son was younger, when he went to play a 335 size guitar, it was kind of like this. But if he played a 339, it'd been fine. So I get it. If you're someone like Greg Koch, who's about 6 foot, 12, then 335 is great. But if you're somebody who's very, very short, 5'4" or something, it just looks like you're playing a double bass, I guess, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, great choice, though, right? Great choice.
Another classic. Okay, number 3 then. Number 3 for me would have to be the Telecaster. Obviously, hasn't been bettered for what it does. Does most things, not everything, for me. The thing I do miss with the Telecaster is the in-between strat tones, which I do like. I guess again, it's coming back to players that you like, people like John Mayer, Clapton, various people who use those middle positions quite a lot. I do tend to miss that on the Telecaster, but as a guitar, in terms of the way it sort of balances and sits when you're playing it, I think I prefer the Telecaster from that point of view to the Strat. I find it just sits a little bit better because it doesn't have the top horn. I find it just a little bit more comfortable, but I do miss those Stratty tones. Love the Telecaster tones as well. Got to be up there for me.
Yeah, I think that the middle position on the telly is actually it's got its thing, hasn't it? I think it's, and for me, one of the most underrated pickup sounds ever is the telly net pickup sound. Yeah. It's just, for me, I love that sound. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic sound, especially for blues. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, again, coming back to what I was saying before about the Strat, the only thing I don't kind of like on a Telecaster is the position of the selector switch. I know you can get various plates now that have angled slots so that the switch doesn't come too close to the volume control. Yeah, because I do tend to find when you flick it back into the bridge position, and then you sometimes end up knocking your volume control down, and it's a bit hard to get back in there to flick in the middle or the neck position. So that's kind of the only thing that I'm not so keen on really on a Telecaster. Yeah, I think there are lots of ways of getting around
what's the Ibanez one that Josh Smith's done? The Ibanez Flat 5, I think it's called. They've changed that, haven't they, slightly? So I'm just going to bring this one out now. This is My Gig in Telly by FGN, which is Fuji Gen's own brand. Great guitars for the money, these things. But what Martin's talking about is a position here. So when you flick it back, sometimes you can hit the volume knob quite easily, but the way that Ibanez have got around that is that they've actually put this on an angle, so you're actually flicking up and down more like a Strat, and I thought that was a really good innovation.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has that problem, you can buy the plates. You can buy the plates with an angled slot in there. You get them on the usual channels, and it's a quick mod just to bung everything back in, and it just takes away from that little issue there.
It's a good improvement, now, isn't it? There's not many improvements on guitars that you go, that's worthwhile, but that's a great improvement. So
yeah, I mean, the other thing, obviously, Fender brought out the Nashville telly, which had the Strat middle pickup, which gives you the Stratty tones if you want to get over that problem of not having the Strat tones on the same instrument. So
yeah, I think for me, obviously, I mean, they're both single coils, but I think the telly's just got that real sort of mid-range, hasn't it? That real, and it's noticeably louder than the Strat as well. I find that most of the time that they're noticeably louder. And obviously they use the same pots generally, but it's just, I think it's just that brass plate maybe underneath the bridge pickup, which just gives it that real growl. Yeah. So yeah, great, really versatile instrument again, though. Fantastic.
Okay, right. Last but not least, I'm going to go for something not quite as common. I'm going to go for the non-reverse Firebird, basically because I do love Firebirds in general, but I just find the standard Firebird, I just find them a bit too large and a bit too big for me. I love the non-reverse, and again, kind of coming back to players, one of the best gigs I ever went to was UFO in Middlesbrough Town Hall Crypt, and Paul Chapman was playing a non-reverse Firebird, and he just had the most incredible sound. So I've always loved those guitars.
Is that a mini humbucker version?
It's three mini humbuckers. He had the Firebird 3, I think it was, with the three pickups on there. I think he also played a Firebird 2 as well, but it's a brilliant rock guitar, but also quite versatile, having the 3 pickups on.
I can't disagree with that, to be fair. I think it's a cracking guitar.
And I could never kind of, although I love the design of the ordinary Firebird, I could never sort of get on with the tuners on there. They weren't particularly great tuners. I know they've improved them, and you can get the Steinberger tuners that retrofit onto Firebirds, which are brilliant tuners. I think the design's great, but as I said, just a bit sort of big and cumbersome for me, really.
I think as far as cool guitars go, there's not many guitars as cool as a Firebird.
No.
You know, and it's for me. If I was going to choose, if I had to choose a Firebird, I'd go for the standard Firebird.
Yeah.
And I know it's a bit neck divey and everything else, but it's just looks simply because it looks cool.
Yeah. Bit large for me, but if you check out Steven Seagal, if you see him, great blues player, it looks like a matchbox on him.
Well, he's
he's
quite
playing one, but he's a
quite
huge
large,
guy.
chunky chap, isn't he, Stephen?
So yeah.
If you're watching this, Stephen, by the way, I mean no offence by that. Just a
great
sizable
player,
chap. Right, so my number one choice is, we're going to go right back to the start. So it's the Fender Telecaster. I think Leo, albeit he wasn't a guitar player, obviously he was just a great engineer. I think he just came up with an absolutely fantastic design, you know, and within that design as well, I think he came up with a great business model. Whereas, you know, it was a bolt-on neck, everything could be replaced really, really easily if it got broke. But for me, I think that the simplicity of a Telecaster, the versatility of it as well. Obviously, you've got that real mid-range push out of the bridge pickup, and then that really creamy neck pickup. For me, it's just a classic. You know, I think generally as well, I found that Tellies tend to be quite a light and a really giggable guitar. One that you can sling around really easily, and you're never worried about bashing the things. You know, I think the things after, you know, an atomic bomb that will be left will be Keith Richards and Telecasters and cockroaches. Yeah, and that's about it. For me, obviously, you know, this was one of yours, wasn't it, as well? You know, I mean, the best two Tellies that I've played was a 52, really an original 52 with a maple board, which is actually my preference. I prefer maple boards on T types and S types. And I just think, and the other one was a 62, and the 62 was a rosewood board, but I think that those two particular guitars, you know, I think if you went for maybe a 51 and a 62 where they introduced the rosewood, I think they're the real classic combos of Tellies. You know, I watch that pedal show, you know, with the guys over there, Dan and Mick, who are brilliant guys, and I always look at Dan's Tellies and just think, God, I wish I had those guys. You know, I really wish I had those guitars, because they're really, really cool guitars. But for me, that was just a great design for me. And I like the way that you have to work with a Telly as well. It's not a guitar that plays itself. You have the slightly increased 25.5 scale length. I tend to play 10 to 52s on mine. So you kind of got to work at playing a Telecaster as well, in my opinion. And it's a grown-up guitar. You know, you hear that phrase being thrown around a bit, but you've definitely got to work for a Telly. And when I switched from Strats to Tellys, so I played Strats for certainly the early part of my guitar playing life, I found that I learned loads more about my playing through playing a Telecaster. And I hardly touched the Strat for ages, for a good couple of years actually. Because I just got totally hooked on the Telly. What do you think about it?
Yeah. I mean, definitely a classic. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the Strat and the Telly earlier, and I think one thing that with the Telecaster is it's a blank canvas. basically it doesn't dictate what you want to play, whereas I always feel with a Strat, when you pick it up, you want to play it like Mark Knopfler or Clapton or all of those guys. And you've got, particularly with a sort of Strat in betweeny tones, it kind of dictates sometimes what you want to play or how you want to play. And I find with a Telecaster it doesn't do that. You can pick it up and play anything on it. All the sounds are great on it, and it's just one of those things. It's a blank canvas. I think, as Keith Richards said, it's his monkey wrench.
Yeah, no, I totally get
Plumber's
that.
wrench. So yeah, it does everything. I mean, you look at all the genres of music it's used in, and you just watch Glastonbury, and every band on there this year just about we're playing a Telecaster, at least one of the guitarists.
Yeah, I mean,
just an absolute classic.
I mean, if you talk about the versatility of this, I mean, I've seen Josh Smith playing. I mean, it's not a Telecaster, but it's certainly it's a T-type. Whether that was his old battered one, I can't remember the maker of that, but it's beautiful telly, to his Ibanez signature now. But then I went to watch Alter Bridge in 2019, and Miles Kennedy played nothing but a telly that night. That's all he played. And that's really quite heavy rock. Yeah. And you have people like John Five who play telly. You play with Marilyn Manson and whatnot. So for me,
obviously the classic, first Zeppelin album.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, this is a guitar that sold 1 million Les Pauls, right? Yeah. So, that solo from Stairway to Heaven, particularly, played on the Telecaster, and everybody thinks it was a Les Paul. So, but yeah. So for me, number one, Telecaster. So number two, as you've probably guessed by now, is the humble Strat. In particular, actually, for me, old Japanese Strats, which I'll come on to later, but. It might be a bit contentious, this, but it's absolutely fine. So obviously this was meant to be the evolution of the telly. I think actually, if you were looking at this in a design point of view, this is probably a bit of a better design than the telly, for me. I think the access, I think the weight's just as good as a telly, but I think the upper access is just a little bit better because it has that cutaway. As we've mentioned before as well, the fact that it's got the springs in the back, actually for me it gives you the options, and you mentioned that natural reverb, didn't you? Now I play with mine ever so slightly floating. I don't know if you can see that there, but I play with mine ever so slightly floating, and I play with 4 springs on the back, and I do that with all my Strats. Simply because I just find it gives a nice resonance through the guitar. I understand that if you put this flat, I think you probably get a little bit more resonance because you've got more metal on wood. But for me, this is just, it was the evolution. I think when they brought in the 5-way switch, I think it's fantastic. I think the neck pickup on the Strat is just probably one of the best tones that's ever been. But I also think that the bridge pickup on a Strat's really good. I like that really glassy, the fact that it cuts through a mix. And that, I think that's probably why it was made at the time. Yeah, and for me, people like Martin mentioned before, people have an issue with that, but for me, I don't really have that issue because I tend to play a lot around here. I don't really, unless I'm sort of chugging a bit, I don't really go there, but then I'm on these strings anyway, on the bass strings. So it doesn't bother me really, but the reason why I like Japanese Strats is my first Strat was a Japanese Strat. It was an 87 62 reissue, I think it was. Pretty much exactly the same as this actually, weirdly. So it had a maple board, 7.5 inch radius, which by the way, I prefer 7.25 radiuses on my Fenders. I never have a problem sort of tone and a half bending on there. And I just think that the brilliant. I know when the Silver Sky came out, that was people were going, why is it a 7.25? And as Paul Reed Smith said at the time, if the guitar's set up properly, you'll never have an issue with it really. But I just think that it's a fantastic ergonomic design, and you can play anything pretty much on the Strat. Pretty much. I think when you get into unless you like Biffy Clyro, I think when you get into the real metal, then you struggle a bit because of the fact that, as we mentioned before, this is slightly underpowered compared to a telly. But if it, as a sort of a studio guitar, absolutely fantastic for me. Yeah. And again, he just got it right again, didn't he? It's simple as that. He just got this thing right. Again, I prefer maple boards on mine. Most of my friends prefer rosewood, but I just like that real sort of snap that you get off the maple for me. So, what are your thoughts on that one?
I don't know. I was always more of a rosewood person, but I don't know, I've changed a bit lately, and I do like maple boards at the moment.
Yeah, see, I grew up watching Clapton. Clapton was the reason why I started guitar with my dad, actually. And for me, it just had to be a maple board from then. And I think probably the reason why I like it more is because I grew up playing this.
Yeah.
You know, and this my first guitar when I first started playing. You know, was like I said, it was the made in Japan ones. And the reason why I like the made in Japan ones in particular is just because I think that Japan is a culture where, I suppose, the whole way of life, or certainly it was to perfect whatever you do.
Yeah. So
I think when they started making copies, you know, of Strats and Tellys and whatnot back in the late 70s, especially the early 83 onwards, 82, 83 onwards with the JV Squire and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that those were some of the best guitars that have ever been made for me. I know people talk about the electrics and stuff like that, but I just think that they work really, really well. And for me, Fender Japan saved Fender because I think Fender was on the brink of going down the pot at that point. So yeah, we've got a lot to thank that country for, I guess, in regards to stuff. But again, this is an early Tokai. It's an 85 Tokai. And it's completely all original, this thing. You know, I wouldn't change anything on it. It's great guitar. So yeah, so that's my number 2, the Humble Stratocaster. Right, so my number 3 is a bit of a left fielder, I think. See, SG Junior. I just think, again, I like quite simple guitars, and I think that the SG Junior has just got this thing about it. And you might disagree here, but I think that the SG in particular was the best solid body that Gibson made. For me, I think it's the most playable. I think it's the most versatile in tone. It's the lightest. You do have the obvious headstock, the sort of neck dive on there. But for me, if you put a good strap on, you're absolutely fine. But for me, the SG Junior in particular just has this thing. It's got a real resonance. I think the fact that it's only got the one pickup as well means that, similar to this model here, which is our Vagabond actually, and obviously you can tell that this is inspired by a Junior. I think because you don't have the net pickup there, there's no magnetic pull on the string. So I think that's providing a completely different signal coming through here for me. I think there's a lot more vibration, and I think it just produces a completely different tone. And obviously when you have a P90 in a bridge, you just get that great sound. But I think a lot of people look at single pickup guitars and think that they're just one trick ponies. But if you learn how to control your volume knob and your tone knob and whatnot, you can actually get some really quite convincing neck tones out of a single pickup guitar. So for me, all day long, number 3 for me is going to be the Gibson SG Junior. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, great guitar. Yeah.
I know you're a fan of Junior.
Well, one of the first couple of sort of half decent guitars I had when I was a kid were SG copies. One I picked up from a junk shop and did up. Absolutely brilliant guitar. Kept that for ages. Wish I still had it. Out of all of the SGs, I think the Junior is one of my favourites. There's another one that I really like as well, which is the SG Melody Maker.
Oh yeah, with straight headstock.
Which is a straight headstock and the three pickups. That's a great guitar as well.
Yeah, weirdly years ago I had a chance to pick up a twin mini humbucker, double cutaway Melody Maker, and I didn't buy it because I had to buy a Shreddy Ibanez at the time. And I still hate myself for not having that guitar. I really do. But, great guitars. But again, simple guitars as well, aren't they? As simple as it comes.
Simple's often best.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my number 3. Okay, so on to my last but not least. So my number 4 is the Gibson ES 330. So obviously you picked the 335 before, and there are obviously fundamental differences between the 330 and the 335, as in the fact that 335 is a semi hollow, and the 330 is a full hollow. Now my only issue with 330 is when you put a bit of gain on, or quite a bit of gain on, it just uncontrollably screams, and people have tried all sorts of stuff, like stuff in the F-holes with socks and stuff like that. I think that was Malcolm Young used to do that, didn't he, in his scratches. But for me, I just think that that guitar for its tones. I just think that I don't think that there's a better sounding guitar on the planet than the 330. I mean, to the point where, I'll get this one quickly. This was mine and Martin's first foray together. So this is our Sundog model, and this is the Sundog P90. And we designed this one actually in mind so that it would sound like a hollow body, but it wouldn't feed back like a hollow body. So this typically feeds back probably in between a 335 and a Les Paul. And the way that we constructed it is a little bit different. So it's not laminated like a 330. This is actually a solid piece of mahogany that we've just completely routed out. And the only solid parts are underneath the pickups there. And I think underneath the bridge there, and that's it. But that's how much I love the 330s. That our first guitar became, in essence, the 330. Yeah, it's just the tonal palette. I think for a 330, I think you can play, you know, in a studio definitely you can play anything on that, and it, you know, pretty much anything. It's just got this beautiful almost, and the pickups tend to be a little bit microphonic. Which just for me just adds that real clarity in, you know, and sort of brightness to it. But then when you play jazz on it or something like that, you can just roll off the tone and muddy it up, can't you? And it's for me it's a fantastic guitar. I think the only difference for me, the only thing that I would probably change on it if I was going to change something on that would be the neck joint, because obviously the 335 joins at the 16th.
Yeah, about 17th.
17th, and I think it's about the 15th, isn't it? On the 330, and that would be my only change for that. But what are your thoughts on? On that
I mean, great guitars. I mean, obviously similar to the Casino, Epiphone Casino.
Fantastic.
Fundamentally same
guitar,
but great guitars to sit at home and play, because they sort of feel like an electric, sound a bit more like an acoustic when you're playing them just sitting on your knee. So that, you know, great from that point of view, and really lightweight as well. If you struggle with heavy guitars, then they're an absolute dream.
I think the last two guitars that I've mentioned, one of the things that I actually love about them is the fact that they're so resonant. So when you play them, you can actually feel the resonate. You know, the guitar sort of vibrating through you. And it just feels like you have so much more of an intimate connection, I think, with the guitar. And that's the reason why, you know, certainly why I love that one for sure, and you know why I love this one behind me as well. So for me, that's my number 4. So what we thought that we'd do, obviously we've talked about our 4 favourite guitars. We thought that we'd give 3 honourable mentions as well. So I'm going to let Martin go first in this.
I think the first one's probably got to be the Gibson Explorer.
Right, okay.
Just because I've always loved Explorers. Again, probably goes back to my youth of bands, you know, UFOs, Scorpions, bands like that. A lot of them using Explorers and stuff. I always just thought, Leonard Skinner, always just thought they were really cool guitars. Probably one of the few sort of spiky guitars that I really liked. Always really liked Explorers. Yeah. Bit large, but again, not, you know, quite comfy to sit down with.
Yeah, I think that they're probably the one guitar that sounds most like a Les Paul as well.
Yeah.
I think they sound remarkably like a Les Paul.
Yeah.
I think maybe that might just be the volume of wood in there, I don't know. But
Okay, number 2, probably the Flying V.
Okay.
Again, I mean, classic rock guitar. People are always a bit put off with them because they say you can't sit down and play them, but if you took them in under your leg like a classical guitar, perfectly comfortable to sit and play. I think they're great guitars, and ergonomically when you're standing up with them and playing them, because there's nothing there, they're just absolutely brilliant. There's nothing to get in the way. They just feel really comfortable to me. Yeah. Great sounding guitar, obviously. Not as versatile as some other guitars, but you know, great overall sort of rock guitar, I think. Last one's a tricky one, really. I mean, one of the guitars that I've always liked, again, it's a bit of a, not a derivative, but the original Music Man Stingray 1, which was obviously a Leo Fender guitar. Loved the guitar, just a bit of a variation on a Strat, but very different in terms of pickups and controls and stuff. I always thought they were really cool guitars. I've always loved those. If somebody said, you know, there's a vintage guitar shop and they've got every guitar in there that's ever been made, and there was one of those in there, I'd probably, you know, and I could have anything in the shop, I'd probably go for one of those.
So Martin doesn't know about this. I'm going to throw in a bit of a curveball. What's your most overrated guitar?
I would have to say the Les Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Great guitars. I mean, obviously some classic stuff written on Les Pauls. I've just never got on with them personally in terms of. I think they're beautiful guitars to look at. I just never got on with the way you play them, the feel of them. Never, I could never sort of connect with that.
Yeah,
probably lots of people are throwing things at the screen at this very minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, great guitars, but not for me.
I'll tell you mine then. So mine are the Gretsch Black Penguin. Gretsch was so close to being in my top 4. I was going to actually replace the Strat with Gretsch, because I think Gretsch's bring something completely different. I think especially when you play them in a band situation, they have this particular range of frequencies that just cuts through a mix, and it doesn't matter who you're playing with, that you'll always be able to hear that Gretsch. I love all Gretsch's really, and I think that I actually think the range of Gretsch's now are phenomenally made, especially for the money. So it's just a fantastic and iconic sound, and you can tell what it is when you hear it. So my number 2 is going to have to be one of the same ones that you chose, the Flying V. I think I've had a chance to play some really old Flying Vs. I prefer the older ones to the new ones, and I just think that they've got this tone which is completely their own. You know, it's a really creamy tone actually, especially on the net pickup. It's such a creamy tone. You know, I think there's a guy called Art Menendez at the minute who plays one playing blues on it, and it just sounds phenomenal. Yeah. You know, obviously you have the issue that you were talking about, but I play my guitar here when I'm sat. So I actually find them really comfortable to play. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. And my third one's actually going to be a bit out there, I think. So I like Duesenberg guitars, and I don't even have a specific model on Duesenberg guitars, but there is one model, and I can't remember its name, but it's 3 pickup, and it's almost like 2 lipstick strap pickups and then like a PAF, and that was probably the closest sounding to a Strat that I've heard on anything apart from a Strat copy really. It was weird. It was a strange experience playing it, because obviously the trem setup's not the same. It's it's a Duesenberg trem, and the shape of it's almost more like a Jaguar really than anything else. But for me, that would be my number 3. The guitar that I think is really overrated. I'm totally on the same page as you. Gibson Les Pauls for me. I love the way that Gibson Les Pauls sound. I do, but mine's coming purely from a playing point of view. I think they're cumbersome. You obviously get quite a lot of heavy ones. I think Gibson have really dropped the ball over the past God knows how many years. Not even so much with the woods and things like that, more with the pickups. I think the pickups now are nothing like a PAF that you would get, unless you're going like a Tom Murphy or something like that. I don't think they're anything like a PAF. They're too high powered. You know, you're talking a minimum sort of 8K for a humbucker on there at the minute. And I just think that they lose that articulation. Now, I'm very lucky that I played an original 58. That's just like a beefed up telly. You know, the PAFs on that, and this is one reason why we chose these PAFs, isn't it? It's because they've lost that articulation for me, and sort of lost that, again, having to play them a little bit, you know. So that for me would be my overrated one. So just to close out the video really, just going to talk a little bit about our company and the way that we work. So myself and Martin decided to come up with some original designs that were meant to look classic, like they've been around for ages, obviously minus the anodized steel scratch plate. But we figured that there was just so many good makers out there who make exceptional Strats. I mean, some of the best Strats that I've ever played have been people like SVL. Tom Gray makes some slightly more modern but really great sounding S-types. You've got Smitty, Fraser guitars based up north from here. And they just make some exceptional tellies and S-type guitars. Barringtons as well. They make some great guitars. And obviously, you know, we've got the same thing on, you know, on the sort of the semi-hollowed and Les Paul type side as well, haven't we? So I mean, you know, you'll know a few companies at least that do that. But I mean, for me, sort of, I think, okay, I'll throw this question out to you then. So if you was going to pick an S-type or a T-type, any maker in the world, who would it be?
Unfortunately, there's some that I would probably pick but haven't played, so it's a bit difficult to say. I mean, some of the nicest ones I've played have been things like Tom Anderson's. Some of the things I think which are absolutely great I've not played, and I love the guy, is John Page.
Right,
Makes some absolutely fantastic sort of Stratty-telly derivatives, which sound absolutely amazing, look fantastic. But I haven't actually played one of those. I guess they're probably as good as they look. So yeah, I mean, you know, you've always had things like Sirs and Andersons, and you know, there's obviously a lot of independent builders building stuff as well. But I mean, the nicest ones I've played are probably Tom Anderson's.
For me, I'd go with Seth Backus. I think Seth's just an exceptional maker, and his shoreline, the T-type shoreline that he plays, is just phenomenal. You know, and I know Big Seth every now and again, and his, you know, he just has a real passion for it, and this is one of the reasons why me and Martin started working together. Is we both really passionate about what we do, and you know, producing something that's going to be with people for a lifetime. And it's going to, you know, hopefully going to last a lifetime. But yeah, you know, like I said, I think there's so many really, really good, S-type and T-type makers out there at the minute. I think Patrick Eggle as well for his Macon, which is almost like a Les Paul type, is just a phenomenal instrument really. And if you want something new, Tom Gray's are great. Yeah, so that's going to close out the show for today. Hopefully you've really liked this video. This is, like I said, the first in our YouTube career, so to speak. Hopefully, you know, eventually we're going to make sure that the production's a little bit better, you know, the filming's a little bit better and everything else, but we're just dipping our toe at the moment. But if you do like what you see, and if you've got any topics that you want us to cover, then please stick them in the comments section below. And if you'd like to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and even share this to your friends if they want to see two Northerners chatting rubbish about guitars. And Jake, who's about to walk in now, you know, if you want to see like a wiry teenager play some really good guitar, then yeah, great.
Yeah, and obviously let us know any of your comments on any of the things we've talked about. You know, your thoughts on what your favourite guitars are and why. That's always good to hear from a point of view of people who are building guitars. So, you know, we can sort of take on board your comments and likes, dislikes, and
I'd love to see a top four actually, different people, and you know, especially from different backgrounds. You know, if you're a metal player, send them in. Like yeah, cool. So for today, I've been Phil. Thanks very much for watching.
I've been Martin.
Bye.
Jake's been Jake.
Jake's been Jake. So thanks very much, guys.
See you again.
See you again soon.